Some 2 years ago, the Senate Health Subcommittee heard chilling testimony about the human experimentation activities of the Central Intelligence Agency. The Deputy Director of the CIA revealed that over 30 universities and institutions were involved in an extensive testing and experimentation program, which included covert drug tests on unwitting citizens at all social levels, high and low, Native Americans and foreign. Several of these tests involved the administration of LSD to unwitting subjects in social situations. At least one death, that of Dr. Olson, resulted from these activities. The agency itself acknowledged that these tests made little scientific sense. And the agents doing the monitoring were not qualified scientific observers, and the test subjects were seldom accessible beyond the first hours of the test. And in a number of instances, the test subject became ill for hours or days, and effective follow-up was impossible. Other experiments were equally offensive. For example, heroin addicts were enticed into participating in LSD experiments in order to get a reward, heroin. And perhaps most disturbing of all was the fact that the extent of the experimentation on human subjects was unknown. The records of all these activities were destroyed in January of 1973 at the instructor of the then CIA Director, Richard Helms. In spite of persistent inquiries by both the Health Subcommittee and the Intelligence Committee, no additional records or information were forthcoming, and no single individual could be found who remembered the details, not the director of the CIA who ordered the documents destroyed, not the official responsible for the program, nor any of his associates, which requires a shroud of secrecy in order to operate as a very sacred trust from the American people. The CIA's program of human experimentation in the 50s and 60s violated that trust, and it was violated again on the day the bulk of the agency's records were destroyed in '73, and it's violated each time a responsible official refuses to recollect the details of the program. The best safeguard against the abuses in the future is a complete public accounting of the abuses in the past. And I think this is illustrated, as Chairman Inouye pointed out. These are issues or questions that happened in the 1950s and 60s, go back some 15, 20 years ago. But they're front page news today, as we see in the major newspapers and on the television and the media of this country. And the reason they are, I think, is because it just continuously begins to trickle out, sort of month after month. And the best way to put this period behind us, obviously, is to have the full information. And I think that's the desire of Admiral Turner and the members of this committee. The Central Intelligence Committee agency drugged American citizens without their knowledge or consent. It used university facilities and personnel without their knowledge.
And facilitate our getting all of the information that both of your committees need into the record we have on a subject known as Project MKULTRA, a project which took place from 1953 to 1964. It was an umbrella project under which there were numerous sub-projects for research, among other things, on drugs and behavioral modification. 1963 Inspector General report on MKULTRA, made available to both the Church Committee and the Subcommittee on Health, mentions electroshock and harassment substances, covert testing on unwitting U.S. citizens, the search for new materials through arrangements with specialists in hospitals and universities, and the fact that the Technical Service Division of CIA had initiated 144 sub-projects related to the control of human behavior. We are now in the possession of the names of 185 non-government researchers and assistants who are identified in the recovered material dealing with these 149 sub-projects. There are also names of 80 institutions where work was done or with which these people were affiliated. The institutions include 44 colleges or universities, 15 research foundations or chemical or pharmaceutical companies or the like, 12 hospitals or clinics, in addition to those associated with the universities, and 3 penal institutions. While the identities of some of these people and institutions were known previously, the discovery of the new identities adds to our knowledge of MKULTRA. Most of the people and institutions involved were not aware of CIA sponsorship. We should certainly assume that the researchers and institutions which cooperated with CIA on a witting basis acted in good faith and in the belief that they were aiding their government in a legitimate and proper purpose. I believe that we all have a moral obligation to these researchers and institutions to protect them from any unjustified embarrassment or damage to their reputations which revelation of their identities might bring. In addition, I have a legal obligation under the Privacy Act not to publicly disclose the names of the individual researchers without their consent. This is especially true, of course, for those researchers and institutions which were unwitting participants in CIA-sponsored activities.
What we're basically talking about is an activity which took place in the country that involved the perversion and the corruption of many of our outstanding research centers in this country with CIA funds, where some of our top researchers were unwittingly involved in research sponsored by the agency in which they had no knowledge of the background or the support for it. Much of it was done with American citizens who were completely unknowing in terms of taking various drugs. And there are perhaps any number of Americans who are walking around today on the East Coast or West Coast that were given drugs with all the kinds of physical and psychological damage that can be caused. We've gone over that in very careful detail, and it's significant and severe indeed. And the MK often, and the MK Chickwit. Could you give us also a report on those particular programs?
Yes, sir.
Did they involve experimentation, human experimentation?
No, sir.
None of them.
There was something.
Well, let me say this, that these programs are the code names for the CIA participation in what was basically a Department of Defense program. When these programs were summarized and reported to the Church Committee, to the Congress, and I have, since they've been re-mentioned in the press in the last 2 days here, not had time to go through and personally review them.
Do you have any indication that one of the kinds of experimentation there related to terminally ill cancer patients, which you do acknowledge in another part was at some point being done somewhere? And my question is there any indication that the terminally ill cancer patients were experimented with there?
But are they connected, 35 and 45? Yes, it does appear there is a connection here, sir.
The other question I had relates to something you have called perfect concussion, a series of experiments on perfect concussion. I wonder if you just tell us what your understanding of perfect concussion is.
Is that in my testimony, sir, or in some other document? I remember that number 54 was canceled and never carried out.
Never happened.
Well, I do believe that first year the project in 55 was carried out in the Office of Naval Research, according to the information that you supplied us, and you folks were participants at that point. Because you go on to say in the data that the experimenter at ONR found out about CIA's role, discovered that it was a cover, and that point, then it was transferred to MKULTRA in 1956. And again, this is backup material you've given us. So it was canceled at some time. I'm not disagreeing with that, but apparently there was at least a year or two that somebody was percussing brains with blackjacks and sound waves and some other things, as are detailed in some more backup material.
The data available to me is that this project was never funded by the CIA, but I will double check that and furnish the information for the record for you as to whether there was ever any connection here, and if so, what the nature of the work was.
Not clear on how we get magicians into the spook business.
I've interpreted this as to how to slip the Mickey into the fin, but I'd like to ask my advisors here to...
I think that's essentially it, Senator. Surreptitious administration of material to someone, deceptive practices, how to distract someone's attention while you're doing something else. As I understand, there was also some type of a covert communication project involved with the study of how magicians and their assistants perhaps communicate information to one another without having other people know it. This is the type of thing that was involved, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, you see, Admiral Turner, you come to the committees this morning and indicate that now at last we have the information. We don't have to be concerned about anything in the future on it. And I don't know how you can give those assurances to the members of these committees as well as to the American people when you haven't since 1975 even talked to the principal person that was in charge of the program. And the records were destroyed. He is the fellow that was running the program, and the agency hadn't talked to him since the development of this new material.
Our only concern here is the proprieties involved, and we'll dig into this and work with the Justice Department on who, if either of us, should get into discussions with Dr. Gottlieb so as not to prejudice any legal rights that may be involved here or to appear in any way to be being improper.
Well, you have not. Do I understand you haven't contacted Justice Department about this particular case since the development of this new material?
Yes.
About Gottlieb?
Not about Gottlieb specifically. We have contacted
It's amazing
them.
to me. I mean, can you understand the difficulty that any of us might have in terms of comprehending that when you develop a whole new series of materials that are in the front page of every newspaper in the country and are on every television? I mean, that means something, but it doesn't mean nearly as much as the interest we have on the fact about the testing and unwitting Americans. And every single document that the staff reviews has Mr. Gottlieb's name on it. Has Mr. Gottlieb's name on it. And you come up to tell us that we don't have to worry anymore. These are the final facts, and Mr. Gottlieb hasn't been talked to.
Sir, I'm not in any way saying to you these are the final facts. I'm saying to you these are all the facts that I've got available.
I know, but you haven't, and you haven't talked to the person that was in charge of the program. That's, so what kind of value or what kind of weight can we give it?
We're happy to talk to him. I think the issue here, again, is one of propriety and how to go about this. We've not, I believe, enough new information about Gottlieb's participation here to signal that his interview would be that more revealing than what was revealed in 1975.
Well,